On a chilly evening in the spring of 1957, an audience at the historic Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood witnessed a moment that would foreshadow a legendary career and a life filled with drama both on and off the screen. The film was a noir thriller titled Shadows at Dusk, and among its ensemble cast was a fresh-faced actor named Carter Vanderbilt. As the lights dimmed and the screen flickered to life, most viewers did not yet know Carter's name. Yet in the film's pivotal final scene, when he turned toward the camera with desperate eyes, there was a ripple of collective awe in the theater. Friends and acquaintances who were there recalled that instant as the moment Carter Vanderbilt became a star. In time, he would be hailed as one of Hollywood's most compelling leading men, a figure whose personal demons, creative triumphs, and public controversies would shape his destiny and leave an indelible impact on American cinema. From our modern vantage point, it might be surprising that a person with a name as patrician-sounding as Carter Vanderbilt emerged from decidedly modest beginnings. Born in the heartland of the United States on September 22, 1932, he was the only child of Wilson Vanderbilt, a traveling salesman, and Anna Vanderbilt, a homemaker with aspirations of writing. Though the surname Vanderbilt carried aristocratic echoes from the Gilded Age, Carter's lineage was altogether different from the famous Vanderbilt dynasty. His family scraped by, moving from one dusty Midwestern town to another, following Wilson's sales routes and searching for any economic foothold they could find in the aftermath of the Great Depression. Carter's childhood was a patchwork of transients, fueled by his parents' determination to stay employed at a time when steady work was a luxury. Early on, Carter displayed a restless spirit that matched his family's nomadic life. Anna, who never lost her creative streak despite her difficult circumstances, encouraged her son's artistic interests. She read to him from Shakespeare, from popular magazines, and from classic novels, anything she could get at local libraries. She also taught him to see the world through an imaginative lens, turning each new home into a stage set for some grand drama. By the time Carter was 10, he had performed impromptu monologues in countless living rooms and even a few public parks, once stepping onto a park bench in St. Louis to declaim a speech from Hamlet while passers-by watched with amusement. "My boy's a born performer," Anna would say. "When he believes in something, he can light up a room." This spark in Carter's personality often clashed with his father's more practical view of life. Wilson recognized the uncertain road that artists traveled. He hoped Carter would attend college and find stable work in the post-war boom, perhaps in a respectable business or as an accountant. Tensions sometimes ran high in their small household, particularly once Carter entered adolescence. Later in life, the actor would recall a vivid argument in their cramped apartment in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He was 16 at the time, itching to move to a bigger city where he could pursue acting more seriously. His father, worn out from a day of poor sales, shouted that acting was a pipe dream. Only the lucky ones make it. Carter responded that he would be that lucky one because he had no choice but to try. In the late 1940s, the United States was in the midst of seismic cultural transformations. Soldiers returning from World War II stirred up social and economic changes, while Hollywood boomed with the rise of new technologies and the post-war thirst for escapist entertainment. Though the studio system still reigned, cracks were beginning to show. Actors were starting to chafe under restrictive contracts, and black and white was giving way to color. Within a few years, the golden age of Hollywood would morph into something else entirely. But in that transitional moment, young talents from across the country still dreamt of stardom under the glow of the Hollywood sign. Carter convinced his parents to let him move to Los Angeles in 1950 on the condition that he would at least enroll in an acting workshop while finding a day job to pay the bills. He arrived with a few dollars in his pocket and a heart full of ambition. He shared a small apartment near Sunset Boulevard with two other aspiring actors he had met through mutual acquaintances. Rent was cheap, but so were the wages at the diner where he worked as a busboy. Still, Carter felt his life beginning. During the day, he stacked dishes and cleared tables. At night, he took the bus to a local theater group's workshop sessions, honing his craft by performing scenes from Tennessee Williams plays. One of Carter's earliest breaks came unexpectedly. After nearly a year of rejections at casting calls, he secured a small role in a traveling stage production of A Streetcar Named Desire. This was not the Broadway or West End version, of course, but a smaller-scale touring company. He was cast as one of Stanley Kowalski's poker buddies, a minor part, yet it offered him the chance to observe and learn from more seasoned performers. His raw intensity on stage attracted the attention of a junior agent named Maury Kessler, who saw in Carter something that can't be taught, an underlying vulnerability beneath the tough exterior. Kessler floated the idea of introducing Carter to contacts at some film studios back in Los Angeles. Those introductions mostly led to confusion, as casting directors kept trying to place Carter in roles that didn't match his style or presence. He was too rugged to be a typical ingenue and too introspective to embody the square-jawed hero. He found himself reading for secondary roles as delinquents or soldiers, but rarely got a callback. This changed when an independent producer named Marjorie Green spotted him during a routine audition and felt he might be perfect for a low-budget noir film she was planning. She arranged a screen test, gave him sides from a tense confrontation scene, and was struck by how Carter expressed menace with just his eyes, how he spoke haltingly, as if grappling with genuine moral conflict. That film, Shadows at Dusk, would be shot on a shoestring budget and seemed destined to fall into obscurity, until it didn't. When Shadows at Dusk premiered in 1957, it landed at a moment when film noir was in its twilight phase, but the public was still hungry for the genre's moral ambiguity and cynicism. Critics singled out Carter as the movie's unexpected standout. One reviewer wrote, "In a cast of established character actors, it's the newcomer Carter Vanderbilt who steals the final scene with an eerie magnetism. We should all look forward to what this young man does next." This was the moment that had occurred at Grauman's Chinese Theater, when audiences sat up in their seats and realized they were witnessing the birth of a unique screen presence. Hollywood studios took note, but Carter, still bound to no major contracts, tread carefully. He signed a short-term deal with Paramount, giving them first right of refusal on his next two pictures. Over the next few years, he appeared in a handful of roles that ranged from small but memorable parts. In westerns like Rio Horizon, where he played an outlaw's conflicted younger brother, to leading roles in smaller, grittier dramas that tested how far American audiences were willing to go into the realm of psychological realism. Carter's personal favorite from this period was Broken Lantern, a story about a war veteran grappling with post-traumatic stress. Though it wasn't a box office smash, critics applauded his emotionally charged performance. "He doesn't just act," wrote one critic, "he seems to be living the role from the inside out." Yet the same intensity that fueled Carter's performances also led to friction behind the scenes. He struggled to adapt to the hierarchical environment of film sets, sometimes clashing with directors who found him moody or unpredictable. Part of this stemmed from Carter's method approach to acting. He immersed himself so deeply in a character that he had trouble stepping out of it once the camera stopped rolling. Co-stars would later share stories of Carter pacing alone on the sidelines, muttering lines, refusing to break focus even during lunch breaks. Some found it admirable, others found it off-putting. The Hollywood gossip columns occasionally labeled him as difficult, a reputation that would follow him for much of his career. Carter's personal life also started intersecting with the glitz and pitfalls of Hollywood. His early relationship with a costume assistant named Lucy Bergman ended amid tabloid speculation that he was involved with multiple co-stars. Lucy told a friend, "He's not a bad person. He's just so laser-focused on his work that real life doesn't always register with him." Their breakup didn't make major headlines, but among the Hollywood community, it fueled rumors that Carter was incapable of serious commitment. Ironically, around this time, Carter was forging friendships with the industry heavyweights, like the charismatic leading man Jackson Dean, who became a close confidant, and the veteran actress Astrid Fontaine, a maternal figure to younger actors on set. Astrid took Carter under her wing, offering advice about navigating the treacherous social waters of Tinseltown. In 1962, Carter landed what would be his biggest commercial success to date, Thunder in the Desert, a sprawling Western epic with a massive production budget. Cast as a morally ambivalent gunslinger seeking revenge against a corrupt land baron, Carter threw himself into the role. He spent weeks training with real firearms experts, learning how to handle vintage revolvers, and practicing quick-draw techniques until he could do them blindfolded. On set, he refused a stunt double for many of the action sequences, insisting that authenticity mattered. The film, though criticized for its bloated runtime and occasionally melodramatic script, became a box office hit, and Carter's portrayal garnered widespread praise. "This is the type of role I've always wanted," he told a reporter at the premiere, "one that merges action with a deeper psychological edge." By the mid-1960s, Carter Vanderbilt was a household name among American moviegoers and had begun attracting international attention as well. Directors started tailoring scripts specifically to his blend of brooding intensity and wounded vulnerability. At the same time, the social changes of the 1960s found their way into Hollywood's ethos. Old censorship rules relaxed, audiences demanded more realism, and political tensions, like the Civil Rights Movement and the Vietnam War, reshaped American culture. Carter found himself drawn to grittier, riskier projects, occasionally clashing with studio executives who wanted him to play it safe and keep churning out westerns and crime thrillers. One lesser-known chapter from Carter's life occurred around 1965. Having grown weary of the Hollywood machine, he disappeared for several weeks, traveling to a remote coastal town in Mexico. Officially, the excuse was that he needed rest. Unofficially, it was an escape from a destructive cycle of heavy drinking and near breakdowns on set. Decades later, in a taped interview archived by the American Film Institute, Carter confided, "I was close to the edge. I felt like everyone wanted a piece of me. I needed to remind myself why I fell in love with acting in the first place, away from the deals and the agents." During that brief sabbatical, he wrote long letters to his mother, describing the ocean's calm and the simplicity of small-town life. He even considered quitting the industry altogether, but after about a month, he returned to Los Angeles with a renewed sense of purpose. He told close friend Jackson Dean, "We only get one life. I'm not letting them scare me off." Refreshed, Carter embarked on what many consider the golden phase of his career. From 1966 to 1972, he starred in a series of acclaimed films, including A Pale Blue Morning, a slow-burn drama about a jazz musician battling addiction, The Smoke and the Fire, an anti-war statement set on the home front during Vietnam, and Split Horizon, a psychological thriller that placed Carter in the role of an unstable journalist uncovering political corruption. In each role, he displayed a commitment that went beyond mere performance. He immersed himself in research, spending time with real jazz musicians for A Pale Blue Morning, interviewing veterans for The Smoke and the Fire, and combing through historical documents on newspaper censorship for Split Horizon. Critics were dazzled by the authenticity he brought to each character. During this period, he also met and married Rebecca Allen, a British stage actress who had recently moved to Hollywood. Rebecca was known for her cerebral approach to acting. She had trained at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London and had a disarmingly direct way of conversing. Unlike many of Carter's previous relationships, this one developed gradually, rooted in shared respect for each other's craft. They married in a small ceremony at a friend's house in the Hollywood Hills. Observers described it as sweetly understated, with only a handful of close friends in attendance. For a while, it seemed as if Carter had found both personal and professional harmony, but the honeymoon phase did not last indefinitely. Although Carter's star power soared, the 1970s brought new challenges. Hollywood was shifting once more, this time moving away from big studio spectacles toward auteur-driven cinema. Younger directors with edgy visions, like the wave of new Hollywood filmmakers, wanted to deconstruct the romantic myths of westerns and crime dramas. Carter found himself well positioned for that change on paper. He was known for gritty realism, after all. Yet he was also reaching his early 40s, and new leading men with fresher faces were entering the scene. Rumors circulated that Carter's demands for creative control, or his sometimes erratic on-set behavior, made it harder for him to land prime roles. Also around this time, Carter and Rebecca began drifting apart. Their careers demanded constant travel. Rebecca accepted a prestigious West End revival in London for months at a stretch, while Carter remained stateside, chasing roles that matched his style. His older friends worried about his renewed bouts of self-destructive behavior. He started drinking heavily once again, and the press occasionally reported on nights when Carter was seen leaving clubs in disarray. Some tabloids seized upon the friction in his marriage, speculating that Rebecca was fed up with his erratic lifestyle. Revisiting Thunder in the Desert, or A Pale Blue Morning, reveals the broad scope of his talent, while later works like Midnight's Anthem and Little Favors show a maturing artist grappling with life's complexities. Even cameo appearances in the twilight of his career reflect a man who never stopped experimenting, who believed in the power of storytelling to provoke empathy and understanding. Why should modern audiences still care about Carter Vanderbilt? Because his journey echoes universal human themes: the struggle to remain true to oneself, the search for meaning amid relentless demands, and the triumphs and failures that shape an artist's life. He showed that art is not always neat or easy, that it can be a battleground for the performer's own soul. In a celebrity culture that often prioritizes glamour over substance, Carter's story reminds us of the fundamental grit behind artistry and the high personal stakes that come with living an emotionally exposed life. In the years since his passing, Carter's name appears in retrospectives on method acting, in Where Are They Now? Segments that highlight lost luminaries, and in tributes from directors who revere the golden age of rebellious Hollywood stars. Film schools use his performances as case studies in how a performer can disappear into a role. His philanthropic support of small theater workshops is still remembered and recognized by plaques and annual scholarships given to promising new actors. Occasionally, a Carter Vanderbilt marathon pops up on classic film channels, giving viewers a chance to watch him age gracefully over a span of decades, from the sinewy menace of his noir days to the haunted compassion of his later roles. In the final analysis, Carter Vanderbilt was a man caught between heaven and earth, an artist whose devotion to his craft burned so brightly that it sometimes threatened to consume him. Yet in that fire, he forged unforgettable characters, and left behind a cinematic footprint that still resonates. His life story, replete with ambition, heartbreak, reinvention, and redemption, stands as a testament to the human capacity for both brilliance and self-destruction. And it is precisely because of these contradictions that his memory endures as more than a footnote in Hollywood's ever-churning saga. He serves as an example of how, in the glimmering world of entertainment, genuine artistry can emerge from turmoil, and why such artistry remains worth celebrating long after the spotlight fades. Perhaps the most fitting tribute to Carter Vanderbilt is to press play on one of his classics and watch him inhabit a role so fully that for a brief moment, the line between actor and character dissolves. In that instant, we get a glimpse of the passion that defined his life, a passion that refused to be tamed, soared to great heights, and left a lasting imprint on everyone who witnessed it. He may have battled many personal demons, but he also created cinematic moments that remain etched in film history. And that, in the end, is the essence of a Hollywood legend. Not the glitz or the superficial sparkle, but the profound emotional truths that only a fearless performer can bring to the screen. As the 1990s wore on, Carter made occasional headlines by voicing support for emerging filmmakers struggling to find distribution for their more challenging projects. He served as a mentor for a few younger actors, offering them tips on how to survive the industry's brutal cycles of hype and rejection. In a heartfelt gesture, Carter funded an acting workshop in the very same small theater group that had first welcomed him to Los Angeles decades before. He visited occasionally, giving inspirational talks about perseverance. This philanthropic streak revealed a side of him rarely highlighted in the tabloids, an enduring loyalty to the craft and the community that had launched him. His later years were marked by a quieter kind of dignity. He was no longer an A-list headliner, but a respected elder statesman of the acting world, appearing in select roles that intrigued him. One such role came in 1997, when he played a reclusive author in a critically acclaimed independent film titled The Page Unfolds. The film was overshadowed by blockbuster competition, but critics singled out Carter's portrayal as one of those mesmerizing performances that remind us how an actor's empathy can breathe life into even the sparsest scripts. Carter seemed content not to chase the spotlight. His main concerns now were the quality of the story, the director's vision, and whether the role challenged him emotionally. In the early 2000s, Carter's health declined. He revealed in an interview that he had been diagnosed with a chronic kidney condition, likely exacerbated by years of heavy drinking in his youth. Despite medical setbacks, he continued to work in smaller capacities, lending his voice to narrations for documentaries or making cameo appearances in films by directors who revered him as a living icon. One such cameo was in a neo-noir homage that mirrored Shadows at Dusk, the film that had launched his career. Audiences familiar with his story found it poetic that he would return, in a sense, to the genre that first showcased his talents. Carter Vanderbilt passed away quietly on February 2, 2005, at the age of 72. He was at his home in the Hollywood Hills, surrounded by a few close friends. According to press statements, his last weeks were marked by conversations about the changing face of cinema and fond memories of the roles he loved best. Rebecca Allen, his ex-wife, visited to pay her respects and spent several hours by his side in poignant silence. Jackson Dean, his longtime friend, later said, "Carter fought many battles in life, some on screen, some within himself, but he never lost sight of what made him an artist." News of Carter's death prompted a wave of tributes from colleagues, critics, and fans alike. Major newspapers ran obituaries praising him as an actor's actor and a man unafraid to stare deeply into the human soul. Directors who had worked with him recalled how he could transform a line of dialogue into an emotional gut punch, guided by instincts that were part raw talent, part intense preparation. Younger actors cited him as an inspiration for how to imbue roles with genuine emotional weight. For many, Carter embodied a disappearing era of Hollywood, a time when risk-taking and personal expression could flourish before the business side of show business overshadowed everything else. His legacy within film culture remains profound. Carter Vanderbilt was never a slick matinee idol or a marketing machine. He was the kind of performer who saw each role as an opportunity to explore the deeper textures of the human condition. In the process, he brought out new layers in the art of screen acting, pushing past the boundaries of older, more mannered performance styles. Modern actors who favor a naturalistic approach, who try to live their roles rather than merely act them, owe a debt to figures like Carter, whose commitment to realism influenced generations that followed. Furthermore, Carter's life story offers a cautionary tale about the pressures of fame. He soared to stardom quickly and encountered the darkest sides of that success: substance abuse, broken relationships, a constant battle with typecasting, and the unending thirst for authenticity in an industry that thrives on illusions. Yet he found ways to right himself, sought help when he needed it, and took breaks to realign his priorities. Audiences today, living in a world of social media and 24/7 celebrity scrutiny, can glean from Carter's experience that fame can be both a blessing and a curse. For those who appreciate American cinema, Carter Vanderbilt's filmography is a treasure trove of riveting performances spanning the transitional decades from the 1950s to the early 2000s. Watching Shadows at Dusk, one can see the spark of youthful intensity that propelled him forward,